All right, a little bit early again. Hello. Oh, my camera's kind of angled wrong. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Uh, Let me make sure I have everything queued up that I want to have queued up, to talk about. 2, 3. Yeah. Yeah, I got everything. Okay, cool. Nice. That's good. That's good. So, full disclosure, it's possible that my thoughts are a little bit more frizzled this live stream because it is currently 75, excuse me, degrees Fahrenheit outside. For Europeans in my chat, that is 23 degrees Celsius. Uh, just 3 days ago, it was negative, like -4, -5 degrees Celsius outside. There's like a random. Today is a random island of like spring, early summer weather in the middle of winter for some reason. But anyways, hopefully that doesn't have too much bearing on the content of the stream. I will probably start sweating. uh, but it should be okay otherwise. So, big things going on today. Two big things, in fact. Two like main big things. Uh, Probably try to get to them as soon as I can. I know ordinarily I talk about smaller stuff first, but this is big news day, as it were. Um, yeah, let me line the first thing up. Okay, so first things first. I want to talk about the ICJ ruling. Uh, if you follow the news, you probably know, but if not, that's okay. South Africa filed an application with the ICJ against Israel for crimes of genocide. They brought a case to the International Court of Justice and said, "Hey, Israel's committing a genocide in Palestine, and that's bad." Just realized capture card audio was off there. Um, and the hearings took place over a couple of weeks. I guess they made their case in front of the International Court of Justice. Um, South Africa's case, as it turns out, was very strong, but also it was juxtaposed against what was basically a legalistic framing of what Zionists post on TikTok. So it's not like they had to surmount very much in order to have a stronger case than the other side, if that makes sense. But anyways, from Trita Parsi, this is a much longer Twitter post than usual. I haven't heard this guy before, but I think he's like some sort of pundit in the news world. He's got a lot of accomplishments to his name, it seems. Anyways, he's breaking this news story. The ICJ ruled against Israel and determined that South Africa successfully argued that Israel's conduct plausibly could constitute genocide. The court imposes several injunctions against Israel and reminds Israel that its rulings are binding according to international law. A final ruling take more time, but this ruling will have significant political repercussions. And he offers some thoughts, which I think are useful to go through. Not necessarily because I 100% agree with all of them or whatever. Some of these are predictions that I'm not sure of the veracity or like the reliability with which they're gonna occur. But he begins by saying this is a devastating blow to Israel's global standing. That I agree with for sure. This was definitely like more of a PR case than anything. The case against Israel in the International Court of Justice, because as a UN body, they don't have much enforcement power on their own. In fact, he argues that this does more against Israel than the BDS movement has. BDS standing for Boycott, Divest, Sanctions, which I suppose is also true because a lot of governments have been institutionally predisposed against the BDS movement to such a degree that countries like the United States have outlawed them. Literally illegal to boycott Israel in the United States. I don't know how you enforce that, but, you know. I guess that just kind of means that it's illegal to pass certain BDS laws, or you know, something like that. Sorry, I'm racing here. It's on a day like today, where it's a bit warmer outside, it gets even harder to do commentary as I'm racing, you know. Yeah, I got an item. Okay. I have to pay a lot of attention to how I'm driving here. Okay. Oof. Wow. Okay. Intense first race. Okay. To put it in context, let's see, what does he say about this? Israel has worked ferociously for the past 2 decades to defeat the BDS movement, not because it will have a significant economic impact on Israel, but because of the manner that it could delegitimize Israel internationally. So this is about international recognition and standing more than anything. And that's the grounds on which he says that this ruling does more damage than the BDS movement could have achieved. Let's see. Just as much as Israel's political system has publicly been increasingly associated with apartheid in the past few years, following groundbreaking reports by major human rights orgs, such as Amnesty, Israel will now increasingly be publicly associated with genocide, as will likely those countries that have supported Israel and its military campaign in Gaza, such as the U.S. under Biden. Yeah, I think to put it more simply, this ruling effectively is permission to say Israel's committing a genocide and to be like unambiguously correct on that. So basically the court is saying, yeah, you know what, that is kind of a genocide, I think. And now people saying that won't just be correct on the ethical merits, but will also be correct with the backing of international recognition from the courts. You know, and that the term genocide tends to leave a pretty bad taste in people's mouth. For I think obvious reasons, you know. Even when people don't have the most sophisticated political instincts, you know, usually there's a consistent through line that killing large numbers of people is pretty bad. Ah, Mega Mushroom. Fun. I think he also explains that, like, there would still need to be a UN Security Council vote or something on pursuing official action against Israel, which the U.S. being part of the Security Council would just veto. But I guess that's where the sort of implications come for the United States in these proceedings. You know, because now that the court has ruled that, like, yes, this is plausibly considered a genocide, the U.S. would be complicit in a genocide because we're supporting Israel, and hypothetically would still be supporting Israel after the UN has decided that this is a genocide. I missed the box. Come on, give me this. God damn it. Ah, I really didn't drive well that race. I missed a lot of item boxes. Here we go. The implications for the U.S. are also significant. Firstly, because the court does not have the ability to implement its ruling. Instead, the matter will go to the Security Council. Yeah, there we go. Where the Biden admin will once again face the choice of protecting Israel by casting a veto, and by that further isolate the U.S., or to allow the Security Council to act and pay a domestic political cost for not standing by Israel. I actually think that the I actually think that the domestic political implications of this are less severe than the international political implications. Like, the consequences potentially for like, the consequences for like supporting Israel internationally after what they've been doing has been officially called a genocide, and all that is much worse than the potential consequences for Biden seeing this ruling and then withdrawing support for Israel. Because a lot of people in the United States who support Israel, while many of them are crazy evangelical fundies, a lot of them are also liberals who in some way believe in the rules-based international order and all that. And this would be an example of Joe Biden abiding by those rules, and would thus be, you know, a pretty significant cushion to him losing support, as would the fact that a lot of Zionists in America are evangelical fundies, people who don't support Biden anyways. You know? So if anything, I probably disagree with, like, overstating the potential political cost at home of withdrawing support for Israel. Because while on paper the United States is allies with Israel for the reason of, like, furthering security interests in the Middle East, our interests are not actually advanced all that much by having Israel there. You know, they're kind of a, you know, they kind of function as a wedge, but most of what they do is just cause chaos and make things generally more difficult for us. Manu1223, thank you for the follow, and welcome to the stream. When I have a minute, I'm gonna keep reading that post. Oh, I didn't get the low tricks. Ah, I drove pretty good that race. Yes, let's go back to it. It seems that the Biden admin is still mulling this over, because so far it has refused to say whether it will respect or not the ICJ's decision. Of course, the United States has respected the ICJ's decisions in the past with regards to countries like Myanmar, Ukraine, and Syria, you know, where the U.S. and other Western states stress that these provisional measures are binding and must be fully implemented. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he says a lot about, like, U.S. foreign policy double standards and whatever, which, of course, we're always there, but, you know, obviously this would be a very public example of that, where, you know, the United States claims to stand for freedom and liberation abroad, you know, the values of liberalism and democracy and all of that associated stuff. Meanwhile, we support a state that is not only committing genocide, but has been officially condemned for such actions. You know, that wouldn't be good. And of course, in isolating us from a lot of the other countries in the UN, it would definitely be detrimental to our own geopolitical interests. And that is one of the ways in which Israel is, like, more of a harm to the United States than a help. Not that any of this should be, like, an ethical consideration in the question of, is Israel committing a genocide? Because that question's already been answered. It just shows goes to show that not only is what the United States doing a crime by supporting Israel, it is also a mistake. I was introduced to that phrase recently, and I've actually been quite liking it. You know, not just a crime, but a mistake. You know, it's not just bad, it's also dumb. Gotta catch my breath a little bit from that. Of course, all this amounts to a big fat, like, we'll see what happens, I guess. There's not much I can predict about this right now, but, you know, it's certainly not nothing that the international courts have ruled against Israel in this case. I have a mushroom, but I don't know where to use it exactly. Ah. Okay, well. Don't have a mushroom anymore. Green shells. Okay. Holton Lel, thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream. Whew. These races have been unusually intense for the stream, but I will I'll see if there's anything for me to wrap up with. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. The ICJ ruling also argues. What's up, Colton Low? Welcome to chat. Let's see here. Yeah, I guess the last thing of note from the ruling, from the ICJ ruling, is that the core of the ruling is that since Israel signed on to the Convention about preventing and stopping genocide, that means they have an active responsibility to stop doing it, as opposed to just a passive responsibility to, like, condemn it or whatever, I think. And there have been, I know the Houthis have used that as, like, justification. I'm not a big fan of the Houthis or whatever, but let's see, implications for Europe, national law. Oh yeah, that's right. This could be a wedge for European politics, where certain countries support Israel and then certain countries don't. That could cause a lot of problems. Here we go. The mere application of South Africa's application to the ICJ appears to have moderated Israel's war conduct. Plans to ethically cleanse Gaza and send its residents to third countries appear to have been somewhat paused, presumably because of how such actions would boost South Africa's credibility in this instance. And I think that's one of the better consequences of this, is that, like, you know, hey, you're committing a genocide, and Israel kind of says, no, they don't exactly help their case by continuing to do the things that the courts have labeled as committing genocide, you know. It would only prove South Africa more right than they already are, which is to say, you know, they are. Yeah, pretty significant, I think. As is the case with most, like, geopolitics things, this is going to rely a lot on soft power. You know, it's going to rely on, like, the willingness of people to shake hands in in a diplomatic setting, and like the whole talking behind closed doors and stuff that's typical of, like, the sort of international activism centric model of doing geopolitics. Even if you have, like, the highly cynical like model of national interests in mind, it's like that's really all that happens on the international stage officially anymore. Like, sure, there's funding of insurgent groups and stuff in other places, but this is going to mostly be, like, I don't know, what's the term? Handshaking and plan making or whatever. And the question is just how much of that will actually impact the actions of Israel, which so far it seems like it has to some degree, at the very least. Keep going here. I got hit by a banana. Can you do this with one mushroom? Oh my god, that's such a big shortcut. Hello, Manu1223. Welcome to chat. Good to have you here. Oh, I'm gonna get Reddit, aren't I? Oh no, never mind. Chain Chomp saved me. Thank you, Chain Chomp. My new friend. Don't land on that green shell. I'm dead. I'm dead. I hit that ramp at a very weird angle. Okay. Very hectic ending, but it works out. International Court of Justice, eh? Yeah, okay, that's that bit done. We'll see how that shapes up. Let's move on to the other big item. Also involving the United States. I don't know how many people in the international space have heard of this, or if it's mostly a thing that the United States is like confined to the United States borders as far as like the flow of news. To set the stage, a little while ago, there was a court battle going on, or like a legal dispute, between Texas and the federal government over border policy. You see, Texas is run by fucking psychos who want to kill large numbers of migrants. They literally put razor wire in the water of the Rio Grande with the express purpose of killing migrants that are attempting to cross the river. And in fact, it had that effect. Part of what flared up the scandal into like an active political situation was that a mother and son, I think, her very young son, were killed by the razor wire in the water. Either that, or they were like ensnared and then drowned. Some very grisly situation such as that. And the federal government, Border Patrol, went down to the border in an effort for once to actually try to rescue migrants from drowning and from being ensnared in the razor wire. You know, ordinarily I'm no fan of Border Patrol, but you know, they're not as bad as Texas. At least as like the Texas State Guard, National Guard, whoever. And speaking of, they actually ran into Texas National Guardsmen when they went down there, the Border Patrol. Because the governor of Texas had ordered those National Guardsmen to block the feds from removing the razor wire from the water. And this was when the expressed purpose of the Border Patrol was to see if they could rescue migrants on their way over to the United States and send them to places where they could properly be processed. This culminated in a Supreme Court ruling recently, quite recently, just a couple of days ago, where the court ruled, no, Texas, you can't stop the federal government from removing this razor wire. They are allowed to do that, because the border policy is the purview of the federal government, right? And Texas decided, what if we just don't do what the Supreme Court says, right? And so they didn't. They didn't obey that ruling. But they didn't stop there. That's not all they did. They also took it a step further by posturing, Greg Abbott wrote this letter, this statement about how, the federal government is soft on border policy and we're doing our duty to deter illegal immigration or whatever. And this standoff only has intensified, where the federal government, both explicitly in the Constitution and now with the sanction of the courts, has the authority to tell Texas to fuck off, Other red states have decided, no, actually, we're on Texas's side here. Fuck the federal government, and we love killing migrants. 25 red states have signed a joint statement expressing support for Texas. At least their governors have. But more than that, it beyond just like words on paper kind of support, there are a number of states. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 states have actually sent detachments of their own National Guard, their own military forces, to help Texas in their standoff against the feds. Which is not good. It's really not good. And I have a couple thoughts on this. Will this turn into a full-blown civil war? I don't know. Probably not. You know, a lot of people are invoking civil war as a talking point to describe what's happening, and that's certainly not inaccurate. I mean, the lead up to the Civil War was certainly marked by the southern states having a decidedly rebellious reaction, sort of like this, to anything the federal government decided to do, particularly regarding the issue of slavery, whereas here the issue of the day is immigration. But I think what's more likely is that this is kind of a long play, right? There's all sorts of military posturing right now, and it is possible that like this spills over into actual conflict. But, you know, obviously in the event of that, we all know that the federal government would win that. The United States has the most powerful military in the world. You know, any loose coalition of states within the U.S. would not stand a chance. What's probably going to happen is that this simmers down in one of a few ways, right? Let me just put this here up. Let me rack my brain for a second. Yeah, there's one of three ways this could go, from where I'm seeing things, right? Number one is my preferred outcome. Biden sends in federal troops, goes full tilt, takes control of the National Guard from these states, because ultimately those National Guard regiments answer to the president, not the governors of their states, and occupies Texas. Legit, like Reconstruction 2, send in federal troops, occupy Texas, you know, say, no, you don't actually get to kill migrants, and we don't trust you to not kill migrants because you're willing to defy a fucking Supreme Court ruling that told you not to do that. So we're going to occupy you until we trust that you can, like, not kill migrants. And in that event, this issue kind of gets quelled and is more or less addressed. I'm not going to say it goes away forever because I can't see into the future. But possibilities number 2 and 3 are more likely, and they're a little bit more concerning. Possibility number 2 is like a, what is that, 2849 timer? That's how long I have been streaming. Now the stream time might read a little bit longer, but that's because I have a gradual lead up to the stream. I have like a waiting screen. So this is how long I've actually been streaming for. And I usually stream for 2 hours every other day. Yeah. Possibility number 1 in this scenario, Reconstruction 2, in my opinion, very based. You don't want states to be doing this kind of stuff, especially when it violates international law, and like conventions regarding human rights. Possibility number 2 is that Biden doesn't go full tilt, but does do some level of response to this. Maybe that he addresses Texas specifically, but leaves the other states out of it mostly, or he like does some sort of wishy-washy negotiation, strikes some sort of compromise where like he doesn't actually directly sort of put the governor of Texas in his place, but rather just sort of convinces him to stand down or whatever. I don't know how likely that is, that specific scenario that I described, but like some version of that might happen. And I think in that event, that's sort of like kicking the can down the road, right? Like you haven't explicitly given permission to the states to do this. You haven't like really shown an enormous amount of weakness, but it's also like light-handed enough that states might think they could get away with something like this in the future, right? That's possibility number 2 out of 3. Possibility number 3 is that Joe Biden doesn't do anything. This is a possibility that I don't particularly like, but it is a very real possibility, and I would be doing a disservice to everybody if I didn't acknowledge that. Where, like, Joe Biden doesn't even do the bare minimum sort of wishy-washy response, and just tries, like, only extremely tepidly to be like, alright, let's all calm down here, haha, and then the red states basically say, no, fuck you, we're gonna keep doing this, and receive no repercussion. In that scenario, I think that is actually the beginning of the end of the United States. And I know this is very, like, the West has fallen, billions must die language, but in the event that, like, Joe Biden doesn't do anything, or at the very least doesn't do enough to sort of quell the issue for now, red states particularly will say, like, oh, so we could do something like this in the future, and Joe Biden won't really get mad enough at us to do anything, right? And that's like, effectively, it's a green light for red states, especially, to engage in this sort of behavior, maybe with regards to immigration, but particularly with regards to other issues like queer rights, trans rights, all that sort of thing. And it, like, you start getting scenarios that might be reminiscent of the book The Disunited States of America, which is a book where, like, the U.S. never adopted the Constitution and still had the Confederation, like, Articles of Confederation government. And it's not good. Those are the 3 scenarios I have in mind, particularly. It's possible somewhere in between those gets picked. And I know this seems like a lot, and you may be wondering, there's a key assumption. Why would other states want to do this, right? Like, I know I did just say that, like, Republicans hate migrants and they're actually evil. But, like, what's the real answer? What's more complicated, right? There's got to be a more complicated explanation. And there is. Republicans have this playbook, right? A lot of parties will put out their party platform and whatever. Republicans have Project 2025, right? It's basically their plan for, as they phrase it, a conservative takeover of American government, or like conservative victory, as they call it. It's a little bit whitewashed language. Effectively, they want to have like far-right conservative supermajorities by any means necessary, violating any rule that they need to, etc., etc. Part of that playbook is actually to do the states' rights bit from like the antebellum days, where, you know, they do their whole draconian anti-immigration, anti-queer, whatever agenda in their own states, and then when the federal government tries to fight them on it, they fight back and try to basically out-bravado the federal government in order to get away with this kind of policymaking. And if the federal government ever concedes on that, then it's basically sort of giving away the whole point, that, like, now you've admitted, well, the federal government can't stop the states, either because it literally can't or because it doesn't want to bad enough. And that's sort of the driving force behind all of this. You know, it seems like this was a little bit out of nowhere, in some ways, but it was also part of a larger conservative strategy that they were going to try this at some point. They were going to try something like this at some point, you know, defying federal rulings and federal rules and laws and whatever. It just happened to be that the wedge that they started this on was immigration and the razor wire in the water down in Texas. Yeah. Although, again, I want to assuage people's worst fears. I don't think this is going to become a full-blown civil war. It could become, like, a sectional crisis. There could be some, like, spikes in, like, membership of right-wing militant groups and whatever. I think it's very unlikely that this would become a civil war, because it'd be really ugly if it did. You guys have seen those memes about, like, modern civil wars be like, and there's 30 different factions of rebels. It would be like that, but instead of the rebels controlling the majority of the country, it would be the American government controlling the majority of the country. The rebels would lose instantly, you know? And I think right-wingers kind of know that. They don't actually want to risk it for the biscuit too much because they're well, I would say they're cowardly, but that implies a loaded framing that doesn't necessarily have to exist in this instance. They just don't want to die. I'm dead. I messed up that shortcut. What? Blue shell. That shock actually saved me. So to recap, there's a standoff between the Texas National Guard, the National Guard from various other red states, and the federal government. The federal government is unambiguously in the right. They are trying to save migrants. They have the backing of the law behind them. And the question is, will they do anything? Will they, like, forcefully put down the military efforts of these states to turn the border into, like, a DMZ? And if the answer is yes, they you know, Sherman goes burning again, they occupy Texas, whatever, then cool, this was a one-off crisis, and, you know, that's pretty bad, but ultimately the issue's been addressed, and states don't feel like trying that shit again. But if the answer is no, the federal government isn't willing to actually intervene, they just sort of want to stand there and say, hey, you can't do that, then, like, there's no United States anymore, because the federal government is voluntarily powerless. Sorry, that was a big mouthful. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Am I back? Are we good? My stream caught big hiccup there for a second. I think we're good. Alright, we're good, we're good. I don't know who's chewing on the wires today, but I hope they just stop and let things move on. Is this mirror mode again? If this is mirror mode again, I might be upset. It's mirror mode again. Dude. Oh, what the hell? I don't have an item. Now I do. Ah, shock. That was a decent shock for me, I guess? I don't know. I was gonna say, Illuviate, I'm perfectly comfortable with letting you have first, and that blue shell is exactly why. Don't want to get blued. Alright. Not as good at that on mirror mode, but I made it work. Alright, alright, alright. Hands are actually getting sweaty from this. Ooh. Hey, lucky me! Oh man, that's gotta feel so bad. Literally the moment they pass into first after they red shell me. Holy. Alright, cool. So, why do I bring this up? That was a long gap of me not saying much. I bring it up because it's breaking news, and it's indicative of actually one of the problems I have with liberals in America. Well, just liberals in general. The reason I mention law, right, is not necessarily because I care all that much about about like what the law says. I don't give that too much regard when I'm like forming my opinions on stuff and whatever. You know, the law should be a reflection of ethics and not the other way around. You know, so if the law aligns with ethics, then great, cool. But if it doesn't, then that's dumb and stupid. And the law is stupid. But liberals do care a lot about the law. You know, like a lot of the liberal movements of the Enlightenment were all about equality under the law, right? And I think obviously, you know, that was a good step up from what existed in the Middle Ages, right? You know, you had serfs everywhere, and like people who were literally not allowed, like on paper, to participate in society in certain ways. But with modern liberalism, right? You know, the law arguments, the like arguments about justice under the law only really hold up if you're actually willing to apply that. You know, it only matters if you're willing to say, okay, well, you broke the law, and now we're going to punish you for doing that, right? There's never been any, like, there's never really been any dissonance there when it comes to poor people breaking the law, right? Or people who aren't, like, doing some sort of crime against society at large in such a scale that, like, politicians would, you know? Like, you know, you go out there and kill somebody. Of course that's gonna land you in prison, if anybody finds out about it. And as well it should. But when Republicans launch foundational attacks on democracy, believe it or not, that is illegal. Most of the stuff that the Republicans do with respect to, like, election denial and threatening their political opponents, hell, one Republican in, like, a local race ordered a hit on his opponent. Most of this stuff is illegal, and, like, really illegal. And it should not only be, like, implicating that one person that took part in it, but also, like, the rest of the party that refused to actively distance themselves from it, right? In this case, we have various governors, 25 governors, committing effectively treason against the United States by saying, oh, we're willing to supply troops to a military force against the government of the United States. That is treason. That is secession. But because they're governors, because they have clout, because I don't fucking know, because they're your respected colleagues or whatever, all of a sudden the willingness of liberals to enforce the rule of law decays away in an instant. It's kind of like how a lot of liberals in Germany will talk about the AfD. Oh, we can't ban them. They're a minority party. Or like when the AfD was first coming around in Germany, that's the like neo-Nazi party. A lot of the liberals said, "Oh, we can't ban them. They're just a tiny little nothing party that would make us look weak." And then once they gained ground in the parliament, the liberals switched to, "We can't ban them. They have power now. They have too big of an electorate." Like the entire game of modern liberalism is creating rules specifically to then never enforce them. Unless it's against progressives, in which case they will enforce those rules all fucking day. You know, we find ourselves, I think, in a similar situation in the US, where Republicans have decided that they will just do any and everything. And part of the reason they've decided that is because they know from experience that the Democrats, their political opponents, the liberals in charge of the system, aren't going to punish them for it. You know? The fascists have made this a fight, and the liberals are refusing to, like, put their fists up, or something like that. And of course, recently, the Democrats have been much more willing to talk about the Republicans in a certain light of, like, oh yeah, they're fascists who hate democracy, but they're not really willing to act on it. And even in that case, where I'm being like a little bit more charitable to liberals, it's not, you know, most of the Democratic Party, in terms of their politicians or consultants and whatever, are not like that. They're still like kind of milquetoast on the issue. Really disappointing, I think. But I don't know. I guess not too surprising. Like I said, you know, it was kind of, it was not that hard to see this coming, because this is ultimately a part of the Republican playbook for 2025. Like their strategists explicitly like put this together as a means of like coming back into power again and stuff. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating thing to deal with. Or it's a frustrating thing to have to watch, I guess. Oh boy, Mushroom Peaks on mirror mode. Oh wait, no, is this regular? This is regular mode, I think. Yeah, this is not mirror mode. Whoa, everybody just stumbled on a twig back there, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. This is the true test. How many people know how to drive Mushroom Peaks? I know how to drive it. That's for sure. That guy knows. Oh! Somebody almost got the big shortcut. Alright. See if I can get this wall trick right. Whew! Barely avoided that red shell. Alright. This is probably going to be a much more silent race because Mushroom Peaks is a difficult course to drive, so I'm gonna have to concentrate. Nice. I did it again. Also, I really do enjoy, I enjoy Mushroom Peaks and other mushroom tracks, like, more than I used to. Not for anything inherent to the track itself, right? Like, Mushroom Peaks, I think, is not a good track, and I think it should be removed from the pack. I just like the music that I've picked for my, like, custom music pack. It's, Foggy Forest from, fucking, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And I love that game. Whoa, okay. Barely made that. It's a very nice music track. Very calming. And I like it. I like it a lot. In fact, it's kind of grown on me. You know, there were certain certain music tracks from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon that I always kind of liked. You know, some more than others. But this is one of the ones that I've liked more and more with time, you know? Wow, I am so far ahead of second place. What the hell? I guess that's what Mushroom Peaks does. It's like... Ooh, that was a good shock. If you don't make, like, any big mistakes on the track, you get a mild lead. And that exemplifies a lot of what's wrong with custom tracks, I think. Where, like, one mistake will just end you. And by custom tracks, I mostly mean, like, custom tracks in CTGP and this track distribution. I'm sure there are track distributions that have tracks that disproportionately don't have this problem. But, you know, I play CTGP, so that's what I'm dealing with what I'm dealt. Yeah, Foggy Forest is growing on me. Gotta say. Oh, hey, here's something. I guess I could take a break from the big stuff. And talk about some of the smaller things I've been doing in my life. Where do I want to start? You know what? I'll start with what I've been reading. So, I like reading. I like reading a lot. Um, Usually I don't like reading novels and stuff. Not as big of a novel kind of guy. I like academic books, and things like that. Academic books, academic articles, whatever. I like learning about the world and learning about the really complicated things. Um, One of those things is actually the caste system, believe it or not. I remember in high school and a little bit in college, I got exposed to the first inklings that, like, the pop culture or mainstream narrative about the Indian caste system was not really correct. In my history class, I believe I first learned that, like, yeah, the caste system didn't really look like what it looks like today until the British got there, which was interesting. It raised a lot of question marks in my head, like, well, then what, what was it before and all that. Um, and I read an article yesterday about it, which added on to some other stuff I had read from an economist that wrote about India a bit. And basically, what happened in India, what used to be the case, is that India was much like Europe and a lot of other places. It had what you could call, like, kind of a feudal order. You know how Europe had, like, the priests, the nobility, and, like, the merchants and the peasants and whatever. India had a pretty similar thing. You had the Brahmins, who were like the... Was it the Brahmins, or was it the... I don't remember exactly what they were called. But you had a priestly class. Then you had, like, the warrior class. And then you had there was, like, an artisan class, a small merchant class. And then there was, like, the peasants and whatever. Which is pretty typical and pretty familiar when, when you're thinking about the feudal world and, like, feudalism and stuff. But one of the things that happened when Britain got there is that it was phrased in such a way that the system was phrased in such a way that it was a little bit confusing to Brits. I guess, didn't speak the language and whatever. But then also the Brits were there on, like, a colonial mission. Britain was colonizing India and whatnot, and so I guess the scheme was a little bit too familiar for them to be like, well, we'd have a hard time sort of with this existing hierarchy. Even though we could sort of ingrain ourselves in that, it'd be all too easy for people to recognize that, like, oh, these people are just like us, basically. So they took the existing system and they sort of warped it to, like, more hard codify. They took some divisions that were already there and they just, like, amplified them. They separated it full on, like, so in addition to it being, like, a class system, it was like artisans were, like, a class, nobility was a class, priests were a class. They also became, like, racial identities. It was almost like you fused class with the racial hierarchy of the United States. And you get this weird hybrid apartheid plus class system that had, like, a lot of intermixing with class dynamics and colonialism. Had a lot of implications with the British colonialism there. Very interesting to learn about, I think. In fact, the article I was reading yesterday, here, I pull up my notes. This guy that wrote the article, he notes that there is a caste-in-class dynamic, where it's like, it didn't used to be this way as much, but, like, especially in the late 20th century and, like, into the 2000s, whatever, it became the case that, like, caste mostly exists as a barrier within classes, particularly, like, in the lower classes, because a lot of times the upper castes, or not the upper castes, the upper classes don't have as much caste infighting or like intra-fighting, whatever, as the lower classes. And in fact, there's also a lot of there are a lot of divides within each caste of the like the wealthier members of the caste and, like, the not as wealthy members, where some of them are like, oh, hey, we're fighting to get these castes descheduled or whatever. Like, we're fighting for equal rights for you know, for all castes and all that. But then there are like a lot more poor members of the caste who are like, no, you know, we want wealth inequality resolved and whatever, and like it's a whole thing. What? How did I dodge that? Huh. Whoa, whoa, okay. Glad I didn't hit any of those bananas. Banana. Oh. Ow. I didn't hit anybody with that, did I? Oh. Give me this green shell. I need it. Alright. Whew. Triple bananas. That's good. That was good. That was pretty good. Let me go back to my notes here. What did I verbal here? Yeah, I guess, I mean, look. Caste is a, like, system of class separation that is very foreign to some people in its presentation, because it's like, from the outside, it looks like it's this uniquely Indian thing, and whatever. But looking at it closer, it's very interesting, because it's not the same, but it is similar to racial dynamics in the United States, where frequently it's invoked as this hard social divide, the way that it was in like pre-civil rights America and whatever. That sort of, it didn't really prevent the rich from hobnobbing and doing their thing, right? But it's very useful as a barrier between poor people, right? Like, you know, the whole he who pits the white working man against the black working man is an enemy to both of them, or whatever. You know, obviously that's an oversimplification and whatnot, but it gave me some shades of that when I was reading. Very interesting stuff. And it did give me a good enough picture to sort of understand better Indian politics and caste politics in my mind. That, like, it's sort of like caste is being made into an issue where it is otherwise sort of decaying away as one. Like with the farmer protests a couple of years ago, like 250 million farmers in India, that's a lot of fucking people, went out and protest against some like draconian government reforms. And those, like, almost undoubtedly there was a lot of like mixing of the castes in those protests, because they were all like had something in common, which is that they were farmers and they were presumably pretty poor, you know. Do something like that. Did I get somebody? Yeah, I did. Sorry, Rosa. Keep going. Whew. I can't believe I took that line as inside as I did. That shortcut is really cool. It's an example of like a Shrimless shortcut that doesn't win you the whole race, but it is like, it's significant. And it's also kind of risky to go for. It's like a little bit difficult to do. Okay. Okay, so I can get a box here. That's good. I didn't get a trick off that somehow. Okay. I think I know where I want to use this mushroom. Well, I kind of have to use it here now. Oops. Please don't hit me. Ow. That red shell went slow, specifically to hit me once I had already gotten hit by the fireball. Certified Mario Kart moment. Alright, give me this item. Yay! No! Use the shock. Give me these mushrooms. Yes. Fourth? Huh. Fuck it, I'll take it. That ending section was all, like, good luck for me. Nine players. This is a good-sized custom tracker. I've also been reading Adam Smith recently. Adam Smith, undoubtedly soy because of its implications. Like, always the people who fucking talk about having read Adam Smith or whatever are, like, libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, and, like, tech bros, finance bros, crypto bros, NFT, whatever the fuck, right? So I'm kind of expecting it to not be great, and so far that's been validated, but not necessarily in the way I might expect. I might have expected. I think its biggest flaw is just that it's poorly written. You know, because I started reading it and I realized, oh, this was written in 1776. This is basically a different language. Not necessarily because of the words that are being used. Like, each word is fine, but the sentence structure is so bizarre and, like, almost illegible by 21st century standards. I've had to read it in, like, very short spurts. And I think I've also tried to, like, do a palate cleanser, just reading something else every now and again. And it might seem incredibly snobby that, like, my palate cleanser is reading other academic literature, but really I just need something that's written in 20th or 21st century English so that my brain can kind of reconnect itself to the way people actually talk and write, so that I don't, like, go absolutely insane from reading Adam Smith. Yeah. I don't know. Look, so far I actually don't know what to make of it that much, because he's, like, he oscillates between saying incredibly basic things, which confuses me for the reason that I don't know if he's saying those things prescriptively or descriptively, and saying things that could be either incredibly basic or incredibly racist. You know? He uses the word savage a lot, which is something. Give me this item. Yeah. If they have the shock, they're going to use it right about here. Or maybe not. Okay. Kind of surprising, honestly. I see. Fake item box. Third place? Okay. Nice. Irie's pretty good that race. That was good. I'm gonna leave this room, I think. Yeah. I'll try to find another room. Custom tracks worldwide. Hmm. Oh boy, here's another story. What is this? Hold on. Anti-measures. Here we go. Senate Democrats urge to reject anti-queer measures in funding bills by coalition. I see. That doesn't sound good. The Human Rights Campaign, the ACLU, and 63 other organizations have united to urge congressional leaders to stand against anti-queer provisions in budget bills, a move that echoes early efforts by Democrats to protect queer rights amid legislative processes. Yeah. The group issued a joint letter to Democratic leadership in the House and Senate, uh, demanding solid opposition to discriminatory riders in annual appropriations bills. Um, okay. These riders, supported by the House's Republican anti-equality majority and Speaker Mike Johnson, are seen as a severe step back for queer rights. Yeah, that would make sense. Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign, criticized these legislative actions in a statement. These appropriations bills are littered with an unprecedented number of anti-queer provisions intended to harm queer people, they said. And I say queer, it's the LGBTQ plus. It's the acronym, but queer is one syllable. That's a lot easier. So that's what I say. And also, I like queer as an umbrella term because queer means different in either a sexuality or gender sense of the term. Come on. In response to a request for comment, a spokesperson for Jeffries told the Advocate, extreme MAGA Republicans have repeatedly attacked the queer community in legislation that should be bipartisan. As leader Jeffries has consistently articulated, House Democrats will continue to oppose extreme policy poison pill riders that Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of the American people. Okay, so they got 1 for 3. Ultimately, I think what's not really doing the Democrats any favors in this fight, right? Do Democrats genuinely support queer rights? Yes, they do, and I will die on that hill. For all the ire it might catch me. Um, you know, even though the Democrats are really not good on a lot of issues, even though they're incredibly weak, they do genuinely support this. I don't think that they would go that hard against it, like, or really go against it at all, even if it wasn't in their like political interests or whatever. But that being said, I will critique the Democratic Party for being incredibly weak and spineless on these issues. They have such an unwillingness to attack their political opposition for blatantly evil intentions, right? Like the first part of that was, oh, we condemn the extreme. Literally, the first words of this comment from the spokesperson was extreme MAGA Republicans. Like, I know that they're trying to play political patty cake and all that, but at some point you have to just take your hat off and be like, you know what? No, it is every Republican. Because believe me, it is every Republican. Republicans are just like this. They just hate queer people. It's like their foundational political value at this point. And I think watering down your language when dealing with political opponents as insane as this doesn't do the queer community any favors. It doesn't do your party any favors. It doesn't do you any favors. Although this guy's just a spokesperson. He's not like an elected official or anything. Well, he's a spokesperson for an elected official. Legislation that should be bipartisan. And of course, I don't agree with drawing the bipartisanship card here either. Republicans haven't been interested in bipartisanship since the Reagan days. Anything bipartisan should be viewed with a heavy dose of skepticism on its face. And I mean that because the Republican Party is interested in two things: tax cuts and hating minorities. So any concession to them is going to contain one of those two things in some amount, right? Although at the at the end they did say that, like, they did imply pretty heavily that, like, yeah, this is just how Republicans behave. Um, I just wish they were consistently willing to apply that line. Like, yeah, no, Republicans just suck and they're evil and they hate you. Vote for us or whatever, because we don't hate you and we will give you legal protections or whatever. It's bad enough that their platform isn't anything especially, like, cool or, like, I don't want to say radical, but, like, isn't anything especially cool and, like, interesting. But ultimately, I think, still the biggest sin is just they think that there's any reasoning with the Republican Party, like, in any sense of the word. And I forgot how to drive this track for a second. Okay, cool. Get up. I see. Okay. This works. Oh, I wish I didn't have this. That was a degree of confidence that I did not need to display in driving past that car. Okay, now I have a green shell. I can afford to, Now I'm in the part of the track where I kind of know what I'm doing, what's going on and all that. Oh, that wasn't good. Yes, okay, that is good. Driving really intelligently this race, I think. I'll hold this out just for the last bit here. And I win. Nice. I made a couple of mistakes on that track, but I think the core of my driving was pretty solid. That's one of the tracks where people tend to lag behind a lot. It's a very front-running track. 7 players. All right. I guess I'm sticking with this room. It seems like this is the only room online today. But hey, look. To go back to that article I was reading, I do want to give the Democrats some credit that they're like, yeah, no, we oppose all the efforts to put these kind of anti-queer measures into this funding bill. That's good. Because I think... Well, not because. The reason I praise them for that is, first of all, because it's good. But it's also smart political strategy. Recent political history from, like, the 1990s up until now shows that every time there's been a government shutdown or the threat of a government shutdown, routinely the Republicans catch the blame, and rightly so. They're always the party that's, like, holding funding bills hostage and saying, like, hey, if you don't give us exactly what we want, we're going to shut down the government, and then blame you. That part never usually works. So the Democrats are like, no, we're not going to give you what we want. Here's a perfectly reasonable bill. You might not like it, but, suck it up and pay up. Otherwise, the government shuts down, and it's your fault because you said, no, we want, like, more draconian tax cuts and, like, provisions against queer people and whatever. Ah, I see. That truck is okay for me, actually, because it got me before the boxes. That was a good POW for me. Jeez. I got him. Okay. I keep getting fake item boxes. It's a little bit concerning. No! I don't know how to explain that. It was just sort of a multiple fails of circumstance. Brain fail, like I didn't recognize that the Thwomp was about to do its thing right there, and then my fingers couldn't react fast enough, and like, all sorts of circumstances going on there for a mistake that is ultimately my fault. They released a new American Civil War before GTA 6? Yeah, true. That's fucked up, dude. Can't even have GTA 6, but we can have Civil War 2 Electric Boogaloo. SMH. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. I can go back over it, you know, if you want, if you weren't here for that. Because it's pretty wild. I think I even talked a little bit about it last time, because it was like a developing situation. But, you know, it has since developed more. Gotta get through this section first thing, though. Oh, there we go. Cool. Oh, nice. I raced super well at race. Yeah. Supreme Court isn't racist enough for Texas, I guess? Yeah, apparently not. Well, here's the thing. It was a 5-4 ruling, which means that 4 of the justices wanted to say, yeah, Texas is fine to do this. But no, I think ultimately what was happening there was like the conservatives realized, well, we want to rule for Texas, but that also makes the Supreme Court look like it's as bad of an institution as like anything. So 2 of them like strategically went over to rule with the more left-leaning justices on the court, or I guess more center-aligned, whatever. The real meat of the matter is that like the Supreme Court said, no, Texas, you can't put razor wire in the water. And then Texas said, fuck you, we're going to put razor wire in the water anyway. And now it's up to the federal government to enforce the Supreme Court decision. Because, you know, that's the law, and now the government has to enforce that law. That's part of the, like, procedure and whatever. But so far, in the past couple days, I actually haven't heard anything from the Biden administration about that. Like, nothing. You know? Like, there's the other states are literally sending their militaries to help Texas in their standoff against the feds, and you know the government is silent about it, which is concerning. I like the items I'm getting here. Well, except for that one, but it didn't matter too much. Got hit by a blue shell anyways. Give me an item. Yes! The deep state's pressing our right to murder Mexicans. Yeah. Here, hold on. Twitch withheld that comment. Let me allow it real quick. There we go. That's clearly in jest. Yeah, that does seem to be, like, the line that Texas is going with, or whatever. In fact, there was an interview, the governor of Texas did an interview recently, where he said to the news outlet, the only reason we don't shoot immigrants is because the Biden administration would charge us with murder. Which means that if the administration wouldn't charge them with murder, then they would just be shooting migrants at the border. It's like, it's pretty fucked up. You know, fucked up enough for them to openly rebel with their military against the federal government. I got banned once from Twitch for being racist towards Latvians. Not sure how to feel about that one. Only 3 people? Huh. They deserve it? Wrong answer, buddy. You lose Jeopardy. All your money is gone. They have 6 toes? Bro, that's crazy. That's like a superpower or some shit. Kind of a shitty superpower, but it is a superpower. Oop. What is going on here? You just ran into the wall. Have literal horse heads? Baltic racism is fun. That does sound like a way funnier version of racism than what happens in the United States usually. I would love to have 6 toes and a horse head. Dude, Vosh would like love that shit. He always talks about wanting to be the horse, you know? That is his opportunity. Simply move to Latvia and you can be the horse. It's faster than the wind, a Lithuanian with a stolen BMW. That's good. That's good. I also appreciate that, like, sometimes in Europe, this isn't always the case. There are a lot of people in Europe who are genuinely just fucking racist. A lot of people will say that stuff like tongue in cheek, and they're just kind of edgelords about it, right? Like if you were to sit down and have a serious political discussion with somebody, they probably wouldn't be that racist. They'd probably be like, nah, I mean they're people just like everybody else, you know. And like wouldn't advocate for any racist policies based on that, but then like in the DMs with each other, they're posting some shit about like, well, you know, in the Balkans they are literally insane. But I'm not gonna count them. Zizek moment. Talking mostly about like the central and western parts of Europe. We don't talk about the Balkans. Serbs are fucking wild, dude. Oops, I died. Different species? Yeah, it's fucking what, you know, there's Homo sapiens and there's Homo Balkanus or whatever. Different type of human. Alright. Dude, I want to get back a little bit to talking about the Civil War stuff. There's European and European capital and lowercase. I get you. I get you, I think. Um, yeah, I'm probably gonna leave the room. Dude, the situation with the, like, mounting tensions at the border, or like, between the states here, is... Apparently, this happened in the 1960s as well, when the federal government attempted to integrate schools. And I guess that can sort of give a blueprint for what's going to happen here, right? This is probably going to be an issue for some time. This is going to be, if nothing else, this is going to be a resurgence of the states' rights talking points from conservatives for decades. Because even now, you know, you might hear sometimes, if you hear about the education discourse in the United States, you'll hear about, agree with Vosh that the USA should nuke Texas? Oh, yeah, for sure. I agree that, like, you know, if we're doing the edgy, haha, funny position, the U.S. needs to nuke Texas. But if I'm being serious, the U.S. does need to militarily occupy Texas until shit can get resolved there. With regards to education discourse, Republicans hate the public school system. Why do they hate it? Because it's race mixing. And race mixing is communism. But they also hate it because it gives poor kids a chance. And poor kids are disproportionately black. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Republicans are racist. Therefore, they hate public education because public education represents a big opportunity for people in racial minorities that have been historically much poorer to potentially make something of their lives, you know? And so ever since the 1960s, when this rhetoric was much more open, they've had to sort of conceal and couch their rhetoric in more reasonable sounding language. But the objective is ultimately still the same in that they want a racial segregation of schools. Maybe not in so many words because segregation isn't legal anymore. But if they can achieve that, they can achieve that. That's sort of what they want here. Like think about school vouchers and like school choice and all that. All of those policies are aimed at undermining the public school system and trying to funnel more and more wealthy kids into private schools and to drain more and more money out of public schools. I think the worst offender here is charter schools. Charter schools are just private schools, but they get public tax money. If you live in a district that has a charter school, that school is allowed to run itself like a business or a private school, but it gets public tax money that would otherwise be going to public schools. And then somehow all the non-white schools that get defunded. That's exactly right. And that's the effect of what like Reagan era policymaking about teaching to the test entailed. A lot of schools would get more funding if their test scores improved. And on the surface, some more well-meaning people intended that to be like, hey, look, if you work extra hard and you get your test scores up, then that means you can get additional funding for your school. But in reality, the stick was emphasized between the carrot and the stick. More emphasis was put on if you don't deliver on test score results and graduation rates and whatever, then we will take money away from your school. Your school will not get funding increases. We will redirect money originally intended for your school to other schools that are more successful. And what dictates success more than anything but income and wealth? So the wealthy schools got most of the money. Coincidentally, just a happy little convenient accident, a lot of the poorer schools did not get as much money, and a lot of, poorer neighborhoods are disproportionately ethnic, because, years upon years, like decades and centuries of fucking slavery and segregation or whatever that wasn't meaningfully addressed with any economic package. So conservatives are trying to maintain that hierarchy. I have no doubt, to draw this back to the border standoff crisis, I have no doubt that the talking point of states' rights will be a dog whistle for wanting to kill migrants or wanting to secede from the United States, in the same way that school choice will be a dog whistle for pro-segregationist educational politics. That's why I'm a radical Lithuanian globalist, and all countries should get annexed by Lithuania. Real and true. This would make the world 1 million times better. Yeah. So we have two draconian policies, one being the segregation of schools, the other being the inhumane treatment of migrants. And conservatives have had their heyday. They had their big moment in the 1960s with the education system and their like big anti-integration protests and demonstrations in the 1960s after the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts were passed and after the Brown v. Board decision and whatnot. And now they're having that same moment with immigration issues, where they're trying to basically do a similar sort of standoff with the federal government to say, no, we want to kill migrants, and actually we get to kill migrants, it's our right. Big difference is I don't know how forcefully the federal government is actually going to respond this time, because in the 1960s, I think the the federal government actually did send in troops to like put down the National Guardsmen that were part of these protests. Because a similar thing happened in the 1960s. A lot of states called up their National Guards against the federal government when the government tried to reintegrate schools. See. People forget that the Nazis were inspired by America. Oh yeah, you know, it's a very sobering thing to think that like America is responsible for a lot of the fascist movements in the world, at least in part. You know, and it's also, you know, it's very sobering to think about like the worst reactionary tendencies in American politics and whatever are not that far behind us and were not that thoroughly addressed when they were sort of relegated to the background. You know, the Civil War was only 160 years ago. You know, it's 2024. It has only been 160 years since the southern states were engaged in armed rebellion against the federal government to protect the institution of chattel slavery. And even more recent than that were the days of, you know, black codes, Jim Crow laws. The place where eugenics first got invented and implemented. Yeah, that's right. You know, the U.S. is the birthplace of the eugenics movement as well. Didn't the U.S. forcibly aborted Mexicans? Yes, there was a, for a time, there was a policy of forced sterilization of migrants in certain southern states. That's the thing that we did as well. In the 1920s and 30s, it was a much more overt practice. And then I think recently there were some cases where there were like shadows of that, which resulted from some very dire miscommunication and overall disregard for, you know, some of the needs of like migrants. You know, like the first time was on purpose. The second time was technically by accident, but still really not a good look. Do you see the Brits freaking out right now? Oh, what are the Brits freaking out? UK news? Oh, UK says citizens should be prepared to fight in possible land war? Is that it? They found out if there would be a war, they would get conscripted. Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yeah, apparently Britain's military is, like, not very large, and so they're looking to conscript people. Yeah, the UK has been fucking having a rough go of it, to say the least. A lot of, I guess the military brass in the UK are determined to meet some, like, recruitment objectives or whatever. Your entire TikTok feed is filled with people freaking out. Yeah, I can see why, too. Like, apparently, before this news broke, the British military stood at 74,000, like, servicemen. Right? Service members. Which is not that much for a country of, like, 65 million. I don't know exactly how many people live in the UK, but it is a lot. And I guess the military brass is worrying about conflict with Russia, even though, like, you know, I've said why I don't think that's terribly likely. I guess it is, you know, is a smart idea to rearm in the face of that, whatever. Ultimately, I think Britain has bigger problems than low military membership and conscription and whatever. Because nobody wants to be conscripted. Of course, there will be a war, you will get conscripted, Lamau. Not necessarily. You know, the United States has... there have been entire wars where the United States didn't put out a draft. At least I think. No, wait, no. Maybe you're right. Hold on. I'll probably volunteer for the army. Yeah, okay. I mean, Godspeed to you. You know, it's not a particularly safe profession, but, you know, I wish you the best of luck if you decide to do that. What is going on here? If I get conscripted, may as well earn some more money for it. Yeah, I guess that's a good mindset to have, I suppose. I actually think to return a little bit to the topic of like Britain conscripting people or potentially conscripting people into the military. I think they would have a much easier time with like ensuring a decent military membership if they didn't do so much goddamn austerity politics over there. Seriously, like there has to be some, maybe not directly financial incentive, but like underlying security that would make people comfortable with doing stuff like that. In the United States, even though like we have so many economic problems, there are quite a few people that will volunteer to learn to serve in the military. In part for like nationalistic reasons and whatever, but yeah. We will have mandatory military service until 2030 from what I read. Yeah, okay. That makes sense, I think. In fact, by 2030, we'll probably start to see whether Russia intends to make anything of like their military plans to potentially like push Europe a little further, or whether that's like all huff and puff and like they can't really do anything. So, new arbitrary timeline. If Russia doesn't do shit by 2030, then they didn't actually mean it. But look, I don't know. Let me look up a new story about the UK conscription thing. UK conscription news, maybe? Sky News. I don't trust Sky News. Oh yeah, here we go. They're constantly doing shit here. Yeah, they are. I think like once Putin is fucking dead or out of power, we'll see if Russia's attitude changes. Because a lot of this is him, as much as it is also like a systemic attitude, like political attitude in Russia and whatever. Sending bomb threats to schools. Wow, really great behavior. Libs of TikTok would approve. And I just saw, by the way, a like Associated Press headline that said apparently like, yeah, the UK has no official plans to introduce like conscription into their military or whatever. Which makes me think maybe it was like a couple generals floating the idea, but then like they decided not to go with it ultimately, or it's like something they're considering for the future, but they're like, now we don't really want to do that right now. I see. Whoever used that POW was very smart about it. Oh, and we can't go to China anymore, I guess? Why? What's that? Like, what's going on over there? Did they get added to, like, a do not travel list? Or are they, like, restricting travel from Westerners or something? They stopped giving us visas. Oh, okay, okay. That's not the most surprising thing, I think. I mean, like... You mean us, like, yeah, probably pissy about Taiwan again? That was my guess. You know, that boils down to a lot of what China does on the international stage. Is they kind of want to posture with regards to Taiwan. Ah, a blue shell. I still don't have an item. This is not good. You know, I don't foresee China being like really petty about Taiwan as like a smart long-term foreign politics strategy and whatever. You know, they like they have an economic base to speak of. They're becoming more developed and things like that. Like the more time goes on, the thankfully the less likely it seems that China's really going to make a move to like invade Taiwan or whatever. Um, but like I wonder how much of this is just sunk cost fallacy stuff or whatever. Belarus is also preparing for war. Like I guess that makes sense, you know, like technically Belarus is also at war with Ukraine. They have water nukes. Yeah, I know. Well, look, every country has, like, well, not every country. A lot of countries have nukes, but no country actually wants to use those nukes. Nukes are just an extra tool of geopolitical leverage. They're almost not even valuable in the sense of, like, actually using them anymore. Just in the sense that, like, theoretically we have additional force that we could apply, but, like, that's a red line that nobody wants to cross because I think, like I said in another stream, you would get disappeared instantly by like 20 different intelligence agencies because nobody wants the world to end. But they have water nukes, so they are extra scary. Many such cases. Let me go back to this article. Britain says it has no plans for conscription after top general says the UK may need a citizen army. Okay, yeah. So it was like high-ranking general, but it seems like they don't have any official plans. Chief of the General Staff said preparing for a potential land war would have to be a whole-of-nation undertaking. He praised European nations closer to Russia for prudently laying the foundations for national mobilization. This seems like equal parts valid military and geopolitical concerns, and then also like nationalistic blustering that doesn't mean all too much. Because I think that, like, how realistic is it that they are able to maintain a, like, conscription army? Like, I don't think that would sit particularly well with Brits. Uh-oh. Nightbot deleted a message. Click to show. Oh, that's not spamming. Come on, Nightbot. Here, I will undelete that message in just a second. You have another red shell? Hopefully not. I have one. Oh, he has 3. Very interesting. I see. Whoa, what? It's kind of wild. Nightbot is racist against Lithuanians? Yeah, it's true. It's racist against people who like to put emotes in the chat. Alright. Yay. Mega Mushroom. Alright, 3 mushrooms take me to victory. Or not. Second place is fine too. Stop spamming emotes, warning. Oh, can I not? I can't undelete the message. But I did see the message, and that's what's important. It's probably because you put it 4 times instead of 3. Yeah, true. Lithuania praised. Yeah, it's true. And I think the praise for countries in the East sort of trying to build up defenses to deter Russia and Belarus from attacking. Like I said, that's wholly justified. But then Britain also has, like, Britain's political stature is decaying, their economy is decaying, their whole country is just decaying, and they need something, particularly the ruling class is, like, desperately grasping for something to, I don't know, build some sort of nationalistic fervor around so that the whole country doesn't just flatline in terms of ability to affect international politics, I guess. But then also so, like, people don't become super discontented and all that. And it seems like right now they're dipping their fingers into the pie of military buildups to see if that will work to, like, galvanize people in any sense. But it seems like a lot of people in Britain don't like the idea of being conscripted. So we'll see how long that actually lasts, but I'm predicting that they probably go back to a strictly, like, volunteer army pretty soon. Or, like, they just don't go through with it at all. Because, like I said, this isn't something that's officially in the works. They're just kind of floating the idea. Oh, nice. I'm racing pretty good this race. Ah, don't. Right as I say that, too. I went too far to the right on that one. Should have stayed a little bit closer in to the left. And I would have made that jump. Ow. No, I hit a fucking thing again. Alright. I'm gonna save these mushrooms if I can, but I might not be able to. Whoa, okay, okay. I can use one here. That's pretty good. Use another one here. Probably just use them all to get across that snowfield there. Yeah, I think that's good. No! God dang it. Too far to the right again. Should have stayed closer in. But I'm not too far behind, so that's good. Didn't get that item. That's not great. Ow. That was my fault for playing chicken with somebody in a Mega Mushroom. Give me this item. Yes. Oh, baby. Alright, that's good. Okay. Third. Nice. Wonder when Texas starts getting funded by Russia and China? Any day now. Any day now. Yeah, dude. The Texas situation, right? Brief closing thoughts on the matter, because it's the last 5 minutes of stream. Do one more race. That situation is basically like, if Biden doesn't crack down forcefully on this, there is no more United States. Legit. I explained this a little bit earlier, but, like, you have to, like, whatever the political blowback is, if you want the U.S. to survive as a coherent polity, you have to make it known that, like, a state can't just decide to raise its military against the federal government if it feels like it, right? Like, that's bad, especially when they're doing it for something like treating migrants inhumanely, killing them at the border and whatever, right? Ultimately, I could invoke the same arguments as like during the Civil War, like the antebellum days. Like this is bad for the same reasons that was bad. But then here, let's put it this way. Imagine if the southern states in the U.S. decided to secede because they didn't like the federal government's position on slavery, and then like Lincoln just didn't stop them. Like there was just no Civil War, and Lincoln just let the southern states secede from the Union. It would be like all hell would break loose. There would be no more United States. Like that would be it. It would be Jover. Because I think that's actually the level of political tension and stuff that we're dealing with right here. I didn't get a box. That's fine. It's always lap 2 and 3. If Biden was in charge back then, he would have just let them keep the slaves. Yeah, and honestly, at this point, it's on Biden to prove me wrong. Like, ultimately. I'm, like... It's been 3 or more days since this started, and Biden hasn't said or done anything. Except for, like, send feds to the border. Like, the Border Patrol are down there, right? But then now, like, Texas is responding to that, and Biden hasn't done anything. I honestly, if this continues as it has been, and, like, Biden still doesn't do anything, I would tend to agree. If this were, like, an 1861 scenario, Biden would have just let the southern states secede and keep slavery. Like, yeah. He is sleepy chill, bro. No, I will not chill. He's the fucking president of the most powerful country in the world. He, like, God, this is the problem I have with liberals that I was explaining earlier as well. They are so fucking addicted to tying their own hands behind their back and being like, sorry, there's nothing that we can do. Never mind the fact that there's literally every single fucking thing that we can do. Like, the law says, yeah, we have unlimited power with matters of this, and this. And, like, explicitly, this is what the federal government is allowed to do. And then liberals are like, sorry, we can't do that because, fuck it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's going to tear this country to shreds. It was a good race. I fell behind early, but I had good item use, I think. Anyways, thanks for coming to the stream. It's been good. Been great. Despite it being super warm. I don't know if I mentioned it, but it is 23 degrees Celsius here. It's January 26th, and it's 23 degrees Celsius here. 3 days ago, it was -5 degrees Celsius. So, wacky, wacky world that we're living in. Oh, might be. But hey, it's very warm here too. Yeah, I guess then it's like a very weird phenomenon. It's -1 right now. That is weirdly warm for how North Lithuania is in Europe. Anyways, it's the end of stream, so I'm going to raid Cody Schwab. My man's is celebrating that he got rank number 1 on the Melee leaderboards. Very congratulations to him. Very cool. And I'll see you guys on, what's today? Friday? So Sunday, I think.